that fish vertebra cleaned up. Nice. What was that, like 2 hours? 3 weeks? I'm Adam Pritchard, Assistant Curator of Paleontology for the Virginia Museum of Natural History, and it's time for more Tales of Ancient Life. So this episode of Tales of Ancient Life is sort of a part 3 to a series I started some time ago about the fossil record of fishes with skeletons made of cartilage, a material that doesn't fossilize very often. The first of these was talking about the Carmel Church Quarry sharks and all of the species we can see just represented by their teeth in that site. I then talked about the fossil record of rays and the teeth and venomous stingers that we find from their fossil record. And I thought I was kind of done with fishes with cartilage skeletons at that point. That is, until I saw some of these. Everyone loves the puns, right? This is the tale of the fossil sawfish. Now this requires some context because sawfish are not exactly as famous as sharks or rays. They are an incredibly bizarre group of fishes, also with cartilage skeletons, that are really close relatives of the rays, with their big flattened bodies, but overall shark-like appearance. And their most distinctive feature is, well, the saw. This is an incredibly elongated extension of the snout, called the rostrum, that sticks out in front of the face and has lining its outer edges what look like teeth, these little saw teeth. Now, they're not technically teeth, even though I'm going to be calling them the saw teeth the whole time, because they're not actually part of the mouth of the sawfish. The mouth of a sawfish is way at the back at the base of that rostrum. So we have this incredibly weird structure that has what look like teeth sticking out of it. How did they get there? Well, that has to do with something called denticles. If you've ever felt the skin of a shark or a ray, it's almost sandpapery. And that texture is because their skin is covered by these tiny, tiny, tiny little spike-like structures called denticles. Now, those tiny denticles are actually made up of a lot of the same tissues that make up the vertebrate teeth. We don't have denticles, but we do have teeth in our mouths. However, in some fishes with denticles, some of them grow to be very, very different in size. And it's those giant denticles that grow really big on the sides of a sawfish rostrum and make up, well, the saw. And because sawfish, like rays and sharks, have cartilage skeletons that don't really preserve very well in the fossil record, it is these hard saw teeth, these giant denticles, that are really the things that preserve in their fossil record. Now, the saw teeth of sawfish are pretty simple structures. Cone-shaped, very, very much flattened, as you can see here, and with distinct sort of striations or striped surfaces at the base of the tooth. In this one, you can see some of the sort of surface texturing a little bit better. Based on comparisons to modern saw teeth, the ones from Carmel Church, which you can see here, seem to belong to the genus Pristis, best known today for the gigantic small-toothed sawfish. It's important to remember that 17 to 20-foot sawfish, that 30% of that length is made up by that incredible saw. It can be bigger than a person. And based on the specimens we have from Carmel Church, including this enormous base of a sawfish tooth, that's just the striped portion at the bottom, some of the animals that lived off the Virginia coast reached incredible sizes. Now, when I see a structure like the Sawfish Rostrum in nature, I immediately start wondering about its function. What exactly is this structure that makes up such a huge part of the animal's body actually useful for? And scientists have been wondering that for literally hundreds of years. And the answer seems to be that it's good for multiple things. A lot of the recent research has come out of the lab of Barbara Wuringer of Macquarie University, who studied the Sawfish Rostrum extensively. What her work has determined is that sawfish use their rostrum for multiple things. On the one hand, it is covered in many, many electroreceptors. These are tiny sensory structures that can detect the small electrical fields created by fishes and other animals in the water. As a result, the sawfish has a giant sense organ sticking out the front of its face, well beyond its big bulky body, so that it can detect fishes and prey items far in front of itself. In addition to that, the snout is useful for attacking prey. If sawfish encounter prey items in the water, they will use their incredible toothy rostrum to slap side to side at their prey items, stunning them and potentially even stabbing them. And then they'll swim over them and gobble them up. On the other hand, if they encounter their prey at the sea floor, at the bottom of the water, they will use their rostrum to pin that animal down against the sea floor and then swim over it and gobble it up. And there are reports that some sawfish use their rostra in combat with other sawfish, potentially as part of mating rituals, but I wasn't able to find as much research on that. On the whole, it seems like the sawfish rostrum is a really important part of how they obtain food. It's easy to think of the snout of a sawfish as a really weird structure. I keep saying it's weird. And part of the reason is when I look at other fishes, you don't see that kind of rostrum in these animals. It's really distinctive. But what's incredible is if you look in the fossil record, obviously 14 million years ago we have sawfish, but even over 100 million years ago, we see ancient relatives of sharks and rays that also evolved a saw-like snout completely independently. Swimming in the same lakes and rivers that had Spinosaurus, we see the remains of these giant sawfish-like fish. So the sawfish snout, that incredibly weird snout, is something that evolved multiple times in multiple different groups of animals across over 100 million years of evolution. As weird as it is, it's actually been sort of a standard feature of aquatic environments since the time of the dinosaurs. It's important to know that sawfish are incredibly endangered, and a big part of the reason for that is, unfortunately, their saw. Bycatch is a big problem for them. Even if fishermen aren't looking to catch sawfish, they will get caught up in nets and can easily die while trying to struggle to escape from them. As a result, most species are very endangered. But fortunately, there are a lot of conservationists that are working to preserve sawfish across the world. Sawfish are something that you see in a lot of aquaria around the world because they survive relatively well in captivity. The Paradise Island Aquarium in the Bahamas is actually home to the first sawfish breeding program, suggesting that we can work to preserve these incredible animals and reintroduce them into the wild as hopefully things become safer. So I hope you swim away from this episode learning a little bit more about sawfish and their contribution to the tale of ancient life. Here's an assignment for any young scientists at home right now. The sawfish rostrum, that incredibly long nose covered in saw teeth, is one of the weirdest noses that exists in nature. But it has lots of different functions, as I talked about earlier. Can you think of other animals with incredibly weird noses? Search online with a parent or guardian, try and find some other critters with weird noses, and figure out what they use them for. Because it's important to know that even when you see an incredibly strange looking structure in nature, it probably is there for some very good reasons that help an animal to survive in its environment.